Good evening. Welcome to the November meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm going to ask Ms. Gibson to call the roll, please.
Mr. Yulhorn? Here. Ms. Hicks? Here. Ms. Sherman? Here. Mr. Browndyke?
Here.
Alderman Gibson? Here. Chairman Sisson?
Here. At this time, I'm going to make some announcements regarding the Board of Zoning Appeals and the meeting that we are having here. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial body, and as such, the latitude for acting on applications is somewhat limited by state statute and city ordinance. This meeting is being recorded, and so if you choose to appear in front of us, we'll ask that you come to the lectern to my left and identify yourself, give your address, and then raise your right hands to be sworn into the record. The second announcement I have is that all motions at this meeting will be made in the affirmative. That does not necessarily mean the person in making the motion or seconding the motion will vote in favor of the motion. That's just how we make the motions in the affirmative, and then we'll vote it up or down. At this time, I'm going to note that the minutes for the September meeting have been circulated among the commission. Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? If you'll call the roll.
Oh. Who made the motion?
Sherry, for me, Hicks.
If you'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Yulhorn? Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Browndyke?
Yes. Chairman
Sisson?
Yes. All right, the minutes for that meeting are approved. We'll now move on to, if I can swear in the staff, please, if you'll raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God? Thank you very much. And we will now turn it over for our first item on the agenda regarding Wolf River Center, part of Lot 2, to staff for their presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. Do you know why?
Is it red?
What?
Is it red?
Yeah, it's not running. Do you know? The recorder?
Turn it off and turn it back on.
Okay. All right. Sorry, just trying to, okay, there we go. Okay, so thank you, Chairman Sisson. The first item on today's agenda before you is for Wolf River Center, a part of Lot 2. This is near the corner of Wolf River Boulevard and Germantown Parkway. The property in question has been vacant since 2004. It used to be the Walmart, and it was demolished. Currently, this property has been undergoing a rezoning. On July 22nd, 2013, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved the development contract for this part, and then leading up to this application, there has been Planning and Commission approval recommendation for the rezoning on April 4th, 2016. And then there has been two readings of the rezoning through the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The public hearing did take place. The proposal is to rezone the property from C2 to RH, retirement housing. So only the third and final reading is remaining to rezone this to retirement housing. Thus, the entire application before you is going to be viewed as an RH zoning, retirement housing zoning. And the three variances that they're requesting are from the RH zoning. Variance number 1 is for building height. And as you can see, the property here is located along Neshoba Park, Neshoba Lake, and Wolf River Boulevard, and in here. And the building height the building will be here in the internal part of the site, farther away from all the edges of the property. Here you can see where the building height variance would take place. The allowable height is 35 feet in this zone. They are requesting a height of 51 feet for this section of the building here. This section also may be over the 35 feet, but it would not be the full 51 feet. The other variances before you are to have parking in the side setbacks here, and then the third variance is for accessory structures, specifically garages, in the setbacks. The request for these variances is to develop a retirement housing independent living project. The second variance before you with the parking in the setbacks, while there would be parking in what is considered the building setback, there would be landscape buffers. There would be a 25-foot landscape buffer along the front, and then there would be 15 and 10-foot landscape buffers around the rear and sides. Similarly, for the garages, there would be the 10 and 15-foot buffers from the side setbacks to the garages. The applicant, if the applicant receives the 3 variance requests before you, they will continue on to the Board of Zoning, or not the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for the third and final reading to rezone this property to RH. If they do not receive the variances, then the project will cease. And as we discussed briefly in executive session, these variances are specific to this development. So if you approve the variances for the height, the setback, and the garages, it is specific to this site plan and this developer. Any other changes in a developer or site plan, then that would have to come before you. So the applicant is here if you have questions.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions of the staff? I just have one. Have you received any comments from the neighbors?
No. So this project has been noticed 3 times, once for the Planning Commission rezoning, once for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen public hearing, and then now for the Board of Zoning Appeals, and we have not received any opposition. Or actually at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, a couple people spoke in favor of the rezoning.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sarah, you had mentioned in executive session, one of the commission members asked if this project were zoned, the zoning change would occur from commercial to the retirement. 5 years from now, if things were not working well in the retirement community, could it be changed over to be apartments? And your answer was?
Not by right. It would have to come back through the approval process.
Correct. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Now, at this time, is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this variance? If you'll come forward.
Thank you, Chairman. Greg Markham, 6800 Poplar Avenue, Suite 101, 38138.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Thank you for hearing us tonight. I'm here representing Avenida Partners. We have Jim Walker and Rob Muirhead with me if you have any questions of the applicant. Sarah did a good job of explaining everything. You can see on the screen now there's a rendering of what the independent living facility could look like. More than likely will look like. That's our current rendering. We are across the street, immediately across the street from 051 at West Clinic, and now Campbell Clinic now has the 051 designation as well. Again, we're not asking for 051, but we are asking for a 51-foot height for the building in the back, which is 4 stories, and you have a 3-story building in the front. We have honored the 051 setbacks by having the buildings 96 feet away from all property lines. So we have mimicked the 051 height requirements on this property, and that's one reason why we're asking for a variance. The parking variance that we're asking for, and this was really just a clarification of the code. Parking requirements: off-street parking shall be provided on the same tract as the congregate care facility, but not in the required perimeter, front, side, or rear yards. The way Cameron and I read that was that you can't have parking anywhere but inside of the building envelope. So that's really more of a clarification and just a kind of a cleanup on that language. And then for the garages, the little side garages, the residents like to have a place to store their car. We looked at putting the garages up next to the building, but we were concerned that that might be a fire concern, having carport garages too close to the main building, especially 4 stories away. If there was a fire, we'd have to get into that first level of units, and we just felt like the garages were better suited across the parking lot. So that's why we're asking for the variance there on that. We are adjoining to Baptist Hospital on the Baptist Rehab Hospital on the west, of course the lake on the north, and the Crook Trust Wolf River Retail Center on the east side, and then across the street from Campbell Clinic and West Clinic. So happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Do you have a question? I know that this will, if this does move through our commission, and once you get into the design phase, speak to me of the accessory structure. The back of those garages will be facing Wolf River, correct?
They'll be facing the lake, but not Wolf River Boulevard. Okay. There will be no accessory structures on, as you can see here, there's only parking in the front yard. The accessory structures are on the side and rear yards.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to open it up. If there is someone else that wishes to speak in favor of the variance, certainly don't feel obligated, but you're welcome to if you wish. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the variance? All right. At this time, following those presentations, is there any discussion among the board, or do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Are there 3 separate motions? So we're going to vote individually?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, move to approve the vote.
Okay. And just for clarification, this is the variance to allow a building height no greater than 51 feet. Any further discussion? If you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Browndyke?
Yes.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Ms. Sherman?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Chairman Sisson?
Yes. And that motion passes. Do I have a motion for the second item?
Number 2. Move to approve.
Second.
And this is regarding parking in the front, side, and rear yard setbacks. If you will call the roll, please.
Ms. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Browndyke?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Chairman Sisson?
Yes. And that motion is approved. And lastly, do I have a motion regarding the...
Approve the variances for garages and the setbacks.
Okay. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. If you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Browndyke?
Yes.
Ms. Sherman?
Yes.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Chairman Sisson?
Yes. And that motion is approved. And now we will move to the next item on our agenda, 1706 Riverdale Road. And I'll turn it over to staff for their presentation.
Okay. Thank you. The next application before you is at 1706 Riverdale Road, a request for a variance to allow a fence over 30 inches in height in the front yard setback in the R zoning district. The property is on New Riverdale Road. A section of the property abuts a previous road dedication. The city owns this triangle here. And then, as you can see on the aerial somewhat better, the a majority of the property is covered by a TVA easement, which cannot be developed. Previously, the applicant came before you and requested a variance for a fence over 30 inches and a portion of the yard. This is the habitable portion of the property with the house. And the fence that was granted was along here. The applicant has now come before you to request a fence to extend the entire front property line from the previously approved fence to the neighbor's fence next door. They would have the fence match in height, in materials and color to the neighbor's already existing fence and to their already existing fence. The request for the variance is to allow for the entire length of that stretch of property, about 275 feet, for the 48-inch high fence. And this is the typical fence. This is the fence that was built, a similar fence that was built, and this is what it would look like. The applicant would need to check with TVA if they require any type of approvals or anything else from TVA. However, TVA does allow this type of fencing on their easements. And there would also be, I think you can see here, there would also be a gate that would be installed as well as part of the fence variance. The fence, it would be directly on the property line, and it would not be, it would not be in the right-of-way. The applicant is here if you have any questions for the applicant.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions of the staff? All right. Thank you very much, Sarah. At this time, is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this variance? You'll come forward. If you'll state your name and your address.
Thank you. My name is Sally Peters, and my address is 1706 Riverdale Road, Germantown, Tennessee, 38138. And I'm the applicant to have the fence.
I need to swear you in real quick.
There you go. Okay.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, continue.
Okay. I would like to just complete the fence that we've already started. We took this in little sections for which we felt like we could complete. And now we've completed the existing fence around the house, and it looks great. I think it does. It makes the neighborhood, I think, look a little bit better, and we just want to do the next phase of it, which will kind of complete the whole section from right where we are, almost by Old Riverdale, where it goes all the way to Neshoba will now be all Kentucky horse fence, which personally I like. But anyway, that's the idea. And we'll have a gate there. So I think that's something that will make that whole area serviceable, and we can get in to mow it and things like that. So any questions?
Sure, yes, questions?
What will the gate look like?
You know, it's just going to be it's just going to be kind of an extension of the Kentucky horse fence. It'll be wooden and, you know, probably have crosses on it, or either horizontal.
Great.
So
Is it
it'll be a
still
double
used
wide
as
gate.
Is it still used as a pasture?
It is, but there are no livestock or anything.
Oh, really?
So
Okay,
there are
I
next
wondered there
door.
were.
There are next door, but
Yeah.
my dogs will just probably run on it and play. It's such a nice area.
All right, questions?
Just a comment, Chairman. Ms. Peters, thank you for improving that property. We drive by there often, and it adds to the feel of what the community has been about for many, many years. So
Oh,
we thank you for that.
I think so too, and it's my plan to keep working on that.
Any other questions or comments of the applicant? Thank you very much,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Peters. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of this variance? There being no one to come forward, I'd just like to make a quick comment. This particular lot is unusually shaped, and then compounded with that, the TVA easement makes it difficult to manage and develop in any way. So I think, in my opinion, I will be voting yes to this motion because of those unique parts of this lot in our community. If there is no other discussion, or I guess I should open that. Is there any other discussion? If I could get a motion?
Motion to approve?
All right.
Second.
All right, if you will call the roll, please.
Ms. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hicks?
For all the reasons mentioned by Chairman Sisson, yes.
Mr. Brown-Dyke?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Chairman Sisson?
Yes. And that motion is approved. Thank you very much for coming. Our next item on the agenda, 2691 Scarlet Road. I'll turn it over to staff for their presentation.
Thank you. The application before you is 2691 Scarlet Road, a request for a variance to allow a gate within the required front yard to exceed 30 inches in height. This property is located in the RE district, as you see here. Here's an aerial of the site. This property has come before you previously in the summer. The history of this property is that there's currently a 5-foot-high metal gate right at the street. It was determined at the last BZA meeting that the applicant was at that this is actually in the public right-of-way, and their original request could not be granted, as the city cannot grant a request for a gate in the public right-of-way. Thus, the applicant has revised their application, and they are now requesting to have a gate that is 5 feet high, the same gate, this gate, but to move it back 10 feet from the edge of the pavement. That would put it at the front property line. Here you can see the new request. There's the street, and there they have moved it back 10 feet, which is that would be on their property line. The applicant said that the gate will be temporary as long as construction is occurring in their immediate vicinity, and that they need the gate to protect their property and their driveway from construction traffic. After construction has ceased on the properties nearby, they would remove the gate. The applicant is here for questions, and that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions of staff?
Not of staff.
Okay. At this time, if there's anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this variance, if you'll come forward.
Hi, Teresa Holloman, 2691 Scarlet Road, the owner.
Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, well, Sarah summed it up best that we would, proposal is, even though the gate's in the right spot, if construction occurred, we're taking the gate down, of course, file a permit, and when construction starts, if and when, we're back in limbo again about that. This has been going on a while. When the construction starts, we want the option of putting that gate back up. Actually, it'll just be one part of the gate since it's a narrow space. Putting that gate back up until this construction is completed. So it's an easy process. If both builds, and the rationale for that again, if both builds, and there's one, and this is the best picture that Sarah left up. If you notice our driveway, it's directly opposite the other one, where that build, we have a history of it. It's not theoretical that the builder or the subs would enter into our driveway and cause problems. It actually happened with the previous owner and previous builder and subs. But they would try to use our driveway. In addition to that, the other property is the corner lot on the right that you're familiar with from previous variances. We thought that bill was going to be imminent. It hasn't happened yet either. But based on their design they presented to you, then it's rational for them to want to stage closer to us. I would if I were them too, which would make that bill staging 27 feet away, and then the other one be coming in directly opposite our driveway with large, heavy vehicles. We don't like having to block our driveway at all, but this temporary 5-foot highly visible gate actually does make a good neighbor. It's a temporary neighbor, can't say that often enough. That's probably, since we can't have it at curb, it makes a more reliable way of keeping the heavy vehicles off our driveway. and there would be fewer repercussions. Because we're being a good neighbor, there'd be fewer repercussions and concerns with the building builder or the neighbor who's building the home. There'd be less to fuss about. So we feel it's a temporary fix to be a good neighbor for the process. Although being back 10 feet versus on the curb, and which we found out later was a problem, although being back 10 feet decreases the effectiveness somewhat, it still provides some protection from the larger vehicles. A 30-inch gate would not be adequate because you wouldn't be visible, and the heavy construction vehicles could actually almost back over a 30-inch gate. So a temporary 30-inch would not be near as effective as a highly visible 5-foot gate. So to restate, we want to be able to file a permit and put up a 5-foot gate temporarily 10 feet back, if that's the right code, right? 10 feet back when construction starts, take it down after the completion of the construction. Any questions? Is that clear as mud?
Thank you very much. Any questions of the applicant?
I just have a question.
Yes.
Has there been any conversation about a permanent type structure, a gate being set up
No, we
as
don't
opposed
want
to
to.
temporary?
Our neighborhood's not that kind of neighborhood. I don't want a permanent gate.
Okay.
I would just file, and somehow you guys would help me, the city would help me figure out the terminology. It would just be a temporary one. And if we ever wanted a permanent one, we'd make it comply with full code, whatever it is at the time.
Well, I don't know that we have granted variances for temporary structures, and I guess the bigger question for me is, why would this only be temporary? In the future, you don't think after construction anybody will come in your driveway?
Oh, not just anybody's a problem. I guess it's an odd statistical ratio of problems because this is going to be a nightmare. And we want the bill done and completed for sure. We had hoped a long time they would both be done. But the odds of having large construction vehicles fighting for streets and neighborhoods are far less after these two builds are done. To restate, these are two empty lots right now. And we've already experienced what can happen from the lot right opposite us. It was a nightmare 2 summers ago. It was anything bad it's possible could have happened with that particular person.
Well, I guess,
but it's,
why is it that you wouldn't want a permanent structure?
oh, well, it just doesn't really fit our neighborhood, and it's not something we've talked about. Well, right now, if it's any further away than 10 feet, it's going to be totally useless. You could say right now that and the 10-foot is 30, it's supposed to be 30 inches, right, from the street. The highest you can have is 30 inches. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we have no reason in our neighborhood to need a gate. Unfortunately, we just need this for protection, a very expensive potential protection. We know, again, we've seen the worst happen.
Ms. Holloman, how long is the gate up now?
Yes.
How long has the gate been up?
After the demolition, when we thought construction was imminent, I believe it was the end of 2014, early 2015, because we kept thinking construction was due any time. We've been thinking this. There's been no outreach to us or anybody in the neighborhood. We thought construction was imminent, and once again, I think it may be delayed based on the builder reaching out to us. And the other, a corner lot, we still don't know what's going on there. Both of these were supposed to have been started building this past summer, and again, no work.
Thank you.
So it has been a while. Good questions. Anything else?
That brings up the question of what do you consider temporary then?
Well, first of all, to restate, we'd be taking it down. Unlike when we put it up, and by the way, I searched the code and couldn't find anything about a gate at that time. I understand now it was under the word fence. But right now, we're at home more. So our plan is to take it down in the next 30 days, like Sarah advised us to do. And we would monitor the situation. If we see the build started, then we would put it up. It's a very temporary situation my husband can manage quite easily. And we were a little alerted the other day. Again, we want the build to happen, but these guys were over there, and they were staring at our place, and they had their long truck there. I knew what was going through their mind to try to figure out how they were going to get that truck into that lot.
Have you considered shortening your temporary fence to 30 inches?
It's not going to be near as effective by moving it back. It's certainly at 30 inches. This gate, these big, when I'm talking about big trucks, I'm talking about these huge, big, huge dump trucks. They're actually higher, almost higher than the 30 inch. They would back right over it. Based on what we saw, these guys, that particular builder at that time, which is different than the current owner and the current builders, could have cared less. So I should have measured it, but I'm pretty sure some of them are higher than 30 inches off the back. So a gate would be nothing, a 30-inch gate would mean nothing in our book.
But that would assume that folks wanted to be bumping into gates.
Correct.
The idea is not to.
Right, but our experience to going back was before we put up this gate, we tried other things because we didn't even think about a gate until we gave up in frustration. They bent our cone we put up. Our garbage thing was stolen, and I quinced, but I ended up putting my odor antique sports car out there. I was worried, but we had to go to work, and we didn't want our concrete busted, and we certainly didn't want to get into hassles and lawsuits with builders and other owners in this area. So we put that out there. And just to reinforce what would have happened, there's an audio of the builder at that time telling the then owner, we heard the tail end of it, he said, we've got the demolition done, but we still have to build this thing, and the Hollemans are blocking their driveway.
So, but to clarify, that builder is no longer
correct
in the picture. That owner is no longer in the picture, correct?
Correct.
And this is a subjective question. Have you had a better experience with the current owner or builder?
We proactively went over and met the owner late in the summer. But I might say the last two proposed builders, again, no one's a builder yet, the last two proposed builders, they both have great reputations, we think, right. And we proactively went to them, and they seemed to totally understand our concerns, but both of them restated that although they would protect our driveway, they could not guarantee what their subs would do. They both stated that. So they totally understood why the gate was there, and most of our neighbors do. But yes, the last two proposed builders, again, neither one of them may actually build the home. We're maybe in limbo again, which it makes sense to wait and put the gate up when it's needed.
So your intention is to take this gate down now?
Right.
But you have not taken it down since you came to us the last time?
Because we thought there was still going to be the build.
Okay. And the gate it's a cattle gate. It's a metal cattle gate.
It's a farm gate. It can be used for lots of different things.
But
it's going back to the farm once its job is done here.
Okay. But it's not a wooden gate or wrought iron gate or anything like that. It's a metal gate.
We can spray the color down if we don't like the color, but but again, the goal is to sit it back 10 feet. It'll only be one of them, by the way, because the road is shorter, so it's not going to be both of them. It'll be one gate sitting 8-10 feet back, and we'll put it up when we see that construction is started.
Is there other questions of the applicant?
No questions. I'll go ahead and make a comment, though. I think y'all were on the October agenda, and I'm sorry that we couldn't hear this then. I'm sorry that was canceled, so thank you for coming back. But I see a lot of options that are equal or better than what I see here. I just want you to know I'm not in favor of it.
Okay. And I was open to those options, and I asked. Okay.
Is there any other questions or comments or questions of the applicant?
Could you share the options, or is that something you have to do?
They've already come up, I think. Some of the things were the 30-inch fence, which is within code.
Right,
and
if you've not going to be effective.
Well, if somebody's going to run over that, that's another problem. But
yes,
I mean, you do have recourse there.
For the reason we need the temporary gate.
So that's one, a permanent structure that does meet code. I've heard that mentioned tonight. I think some of those are better options than what we see here.
It still goes to a 30-inch ineffective gate, but I appreciate it.
All right.
My personal experience is that we have low gates in the subdivision, but we don't really have much of a problem with trucks just mowing things down. And they're dump trucks and lumber trucks and brick trucks and so forth. Maybe it's something peculiar to this area or something, I don't know.
Well, this is in building in an established neighborhood. Some of this was very new to Germantown, actually, in 2014 when they did the demolition. The city was not even monitoring this kind of activity until all the problems that existed with this bill, which are numerous. Then the city stepped in and changed the processes with the county on how they monitor the builds in the city, particularly in building. So that part was unique in 14. It may not be anymore. City's changing rapidly for the better.
All right. Thank you very much for coming. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak in favor of the variance? Let me ask of staff, has there been any comments from any individuals notified?
Not any new comments for this round. We noticed previously we received a neighbor who was against it, and then we received a phone call from a neighbor that's
For it, okay. Thank you very much. At this time, is there anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition of the variance? Okay. Any further comments, or do I have a motion?
Just a comment, and it's, I feel like we've had this conversation before, a regret for things that have happened before with this previous builder and the history that you have there. Nothing further. I just don't know how to make this right for a temporary structure that's been there for 3 years. That's the conundrum that I have. So,
and I will echo that as well. I'm an attorney by trade, so I understand temporary has a very fluid and flexible meaning, and I understand your desire to just have something temporary. I understand the application that you've given to us, but I agree with Ms. Hicks. I think there's some other alternatives that that are available that would be a better remedy than this situation. And I'm concerned about temporary, what temporary means in this neighborhood that could possibly have a lot of construction turnover as older houses are renovated and torn down and built new. So a temporary structure that's already been in place for 3 years is a difficult thing for the city to monitor what's considered temporary. So any other comments, or do I have a motion?
My only other comment would be just noticing this. When the gate's closed, are you not impeding traffic when you have to stop to get out to open the gate?
Well, before you answer, what's your name and your address?
Wayne Holloman, 2691 Scarlett Road, Germantown, Tennessee, 38139.
And if do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I'll just repeat. Just notice, just looking at the picture, when the gate is closed, you would have to park your car, impeding traffic in the street to open the gate. Would that be correct?
Truthfully, I can back through that. Today, it's wide open. It's only when we've seen the trouble. Initially, we used garbage cans. One was stolen, one was destroyed. We had a sign. Then we started blocking it with our personal cars, and that got to be a pain because you're trying to go to work and everything. We didn't put this up because of a pickup truck construction. This was because of 12-wheel drive dump trucks, track hoes, and bulldozers being offloaded, and they were not using the 200 feet of property. It was coming into us and backing in. A pickup truck, it's no problem. Usually the gate's open. That's why we made the sign, no construction. We thought this would be gone. In fact, I didn't put it up till we were done with dealing with the cars. they were going to build. And so the first owner, they found out there was an old basement, they couldn't do it. Then another person, this other person that I believe still owns it, he had a builder, nothing happened. It was, the property was being dumped on, became a nuisance. Then he was going to build, but he had a new builder, Magnolia Homes, and went over and talked to the builder, and he's real nice and he understood the problem, and they were using the middle of it. And so it's kind of, well, are they going to be there today? Are they not going to be? I think they're waiting toward first part of December again to make a decision. So we've tried cars, trash cans. It was just to protect it from the heavy equipment. I'm not worried about a pickup truck or anybody else. I have closed it when the heavy equipment showed up, just so nobody would, and the damage done to the street, city has just had a blacktop from where the house was torn down. That shows how massive these trucks were. I'm not worried about construction. We'd love to have our neighbors. It's kind of lonely with one side and how across the street and everything. We have a great neighborhood. And this was, I think you called it cattle gate, and that's what it is. I got it at Farm Supply. It's the cheapest thing I could think. I swear I thought it would be gone by now. It's not even in concrete. And so I don't know what to do except to start blocking when the construction is with one of our vehicles.
Mr. Hallman,
experience with this.
just more clarification though. So when you leave your premises, you do shut the gate?
It may be like this or it may be wide open. If I see heavy construction as I did years ago, yeah, I'll get out and then I will. It's not locked. It just keep everybody honest. So normally it's like this or it's wide open. Unless I see heavy equipment out there. If I've seen the surveyors, that's nothing like that. I hear a heavy diesel engine, I start getting nervous. So, but the new builder, he understands the situation. But as he said, I can't tell the subcontractors, but who knows?
Just a comment, Mr. Brown, to impede traffic. This little circle of Scarlet Road, I can't imagine other than just a neighbor. It'd be a fluke if there were traffic.
Oh, you mean people turning around? Oh, we're kind of on a weird loop. We're not on a straightaway where people have to pull in and then back out and go the other way. It's we're just, here's Johnson and we just kind of do this.
Okay.
Was that your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And my neighbors, they'd get out and over. They don't really care, So.
All right, thank you very much. Do I have a motion regarding this, this matter?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Brown Dyke?
No.
Mr. Yulhorn? No. Ms. Sherman?
No.
Ms. Hicks?
No.
Alderman Gibson?
No.
Chairman Sisson?
No. So the motion does not pass. We will move on to the next item, 7262 Oakville Drive, and I will turn it over to staff for their presentation.
Thank you. The final item tonight before you is a variance request to allow a fence within the required side yard to exceed 6 feet in height in the residential townhome district at 7262 Oakville Drive. This is a small lot, zero lot line planned unit development off of Wolf River Boulevard. Here you have an aerial view of the subject property, and this gives you context for the zero lot line development of this neighborhood. The applicant is requesting a variance from section 6-102A, where that says the maximum height of any fence shall be 6 feet. The applicant is requesting that a 16-foot long section of the fence, right here that you see in blue, that section be 8 feet tall. The rest of the fence, when constructed, was intended to be 6 feet. Upon inspection, it was determined that it's a 6-foot high fence with a 3-inch cap on it. So this section, the yellow section, is actually 6 feet with a 3-inch cap, and then this blue section is 8 feet with a 3-inch cap. The reason for this 8-foot section is to provide privacy per the applicant. This is the applicant's eating area window here, and this is the neighbor's window there. Here, this gives you an aerial view of this section of 8-foot-high fence. And this gives you perspective of how far or close the fence is from the window, from the applicant's window, and also the neighbor's window. This application came to staff's attention through a code compliance inspection. They went out to inspect, code compliance went to inspect the fence as a fence permit had been applied for, and then they discovered the 8-foot section of the fence there. As mentioned, the applicant said that this section is for privacy. The applicant was also notified by their HOA saying that the fence was out of compliance with the HOA and with the city's code, and that they needed to bring it into compliance. Thus, the applicant replied to the HOA that they would then request a variance from the city due to the hardship of this narrow lot line, narrow lots with a very close setback and little privacy to the neighboring window. This is a view from inside. This is the applicant measures here to be 6 feet, and then this is the 8-foot-high section looking towards the neighbor's property. And this is then the view if you were standing at the curb in front of the property and looking in behind the tree and the shrubbery. This is the 8-foot section here. As we discussed in executive session, other options to create privacy would be to have landscaping such as arborvitae trees, or trellis lattice, open lattice work is allowed to be up to 8 feet tall. So right next to the fence, there could be trellis work up to 8 feet tall. That would be an option instead of an 8-foot section of fence. So that concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is here for questions.
Is there any questions of staff?
What height was requested in the permit?
I'm going to defer to Neighborhood Services Manager Joe Nunes.
The permit was for a 6-foot fence.
Okay.
Around the property.
Okay.
I apologize. I had a question for you, and now I can't remember what it was. Any other questions of staff?
It was permitted.
A 6-foot-high fence was permitted, and as mentioned, when the code enforcement officer went out and measured it, it turns out that the 6-foot-high fence, it does have a 3-inch cap on it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they did get a fence permit to do it. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak in favor of this variance? If you'll come forward and state your name and address.
Hey, I'm Robert Bostic. I live at 7262 Oakville Drive, and Germantown, Tennessee. And
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
All right, we need to straighten an issue right away. No permit was applied for this fence.
Okay.
We applied for a fence on the other side of the house in 2 sections. We built one section, and then we applied for a permit and built the second section. This was a replacement of a fence that was there before.
Okay.
We didn't apply for a permit for that.
And just to clarify, the fence that was there before was the 6-foot fence?
Correct.
The entire route way?
Yes, it was.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there anything else you want to add before I open
Yes,
questions?
well, you can't see it very well in this picture. That blue bucket down there, that bucket has got a yardstick on top of it that's 3 feet across, which touches both sides. All right, and we're talking a distance between the neighboring houses with our keeping room and kitchen facing our neighbors' keeping room and kitchen. And the issue here was, how do we get some privacy? In the past, it's been, are their blinds closed or are blinds open, what have you, back and forth. So it came time, the fence needed replacing, it was tottering. At one point, I saw somebody doing construction on the neighboring house standing on the fence as it was wavering. So it's time to replace it. We asked for a 6-foot fence with an 8-foot section, and Memphis Fence, they messed up when they put the cap on it. They readily admit it. They came out, they couldn't believe they had done it, and they measured, and sure enough, it's 6 foot 2.5 and 8 foot 2.5. Now, the issue of privacy, as you saw in the very last picture from our living room, or keeping area, this is taken from near the kitchen sink. If the fence were at 6 feet, I'm looking directly into my neighbor's room, and it's also a question of they've got a TV on the wall over there, and it's the Times Square effect. You're getting the blink, blink, blink in the lights. I know that my neighbor likes to watch Wheel of Fortune. I also watch the Today Show in the mornings, and we have an expectation of privacy. Now, we talked about a trellis on the front end. A trellis is an open lattice work. Does not do us any good in terms of privacy. We still have the TV flashing and blinking, and we still have the ability. I come out in the morning in my bathrobe, and I look across, is somebody looking back at me? Right now we have a very nice neighbor, but who's to say who the next neighbor is? We don't know. So when we put the fence in, we put in this 16-foot section, which covers our 6 windows here and our neighbor's 2 windows. Now, as far as the distance we're talking about, I came in here earlier today and did some measuring, and I can't see your name from here very well.
Brown Dyke.
Mr. Browndyke and Ms. Gibson, if you would swivel your chairs and face each other, you'll be exactly 8 feet apart, nose to nose. And that's how far our windows are. So, if you're living in your home, you expect a degree of privacy. That's why we put the fence in the way we did.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions of the applicant?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I may have misunderstood you, but the fence, the 8-foot section, are you saying it was already there?
No, it was not. When we put the new fence in, we put that 16-foot section at 8 feet.
And just to clarify, it's a 16-foot section that's 8 feet and 3 inches.
Yes.
So, did you build this house?
No.
Okay. Was the house, when you bought the house, was the house next door already built?
Yes.
Okay. And I understand that you have a homeowners association. Have
Yes.
you received anything from, we have a letter from them indicating that you're in violation. Have you received anything from them indicating that they will approve a variance for this, or an exception of any sort for this?
They said if you want to have a change, we go by the City of Germantown code. So the first step that I have to go through is get a variance from the city.
Okay. But they did not indicate that if you received a variance, if they would then grant you an exception to the DCC, the Declaration of Covenants and Conditions?
No, they did not declare that, but I expect that.
Okay. Other questions? Yes. Well, there's not, the question from my commission member is regarding the order of the homeowners association, and just to confirm what we had discussed a little bit in executive session, there's no particular requirement that the HOA approve first or that the city approve first, but I know as a body we have been hesitant to approve something that is then going to be in violation of a covenant that came with the property and is affecting the neighborhood as a whole. That's part of the neighborhood that you chose to live in. I've been a part of an HOA. There's really good things, and then there's some frustrating things. But you would still have that step that you would have to go through to get approval from them. So just to confirm also, I remember in my question for the city has not received any documentation other than what was in our packets regarding the HOA's approval of this fence. So all we have is a letter from the HOA indicating that there's a violation and that he would need to remedy it. We don't have any further correspondence. Okay, thank you very much. Question?
Just have a question of staff. Mr. Nunes, the ordinance currently reads that if you have a 6-foot fence and you decide to do it, or an existing fence, if you're going to replace that fence, if you go higher than what you currently have, then you have to permit. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. If the fence is put up in the same location, same materials, then a permit is not currently required. However, if there is any alteration in the location or materials or height of that fence, then a permit would be required.
Thank you. Sarah, if you could make certain that we get in touch with Memphis Fence to make sure that they're aware of that. I believe that they are, based on past experience, but if we could just remind them.
Okay, along with your questioning,
Yes.
I have a letter from the homeowners, Cry-Lake Community Association Management, who sent me the letter talking about the fence. And they cited Article 8, Section 4, fences, walls, etc., states that all fences shall conform to requirements contained in the Germantown fence ordinance. So they refer back to the city of Germantown. You know, I'm between who comes first in this variance?
I think probably, and this is, I have built houses in there. I believe that that's just saying that they go by the same standards as the city.
In that a 6-foot fence is the limit.
Our ordinance is the same as what they're allowing in their covenants.
Right, but there's no express expectation that if a variance is granted by the city, that a variance would then also, or exception, be granted by the HOA. They're under no obligation to say, oh, well, if the BZA gave you a variance, then we will give you an exception. They will make that decision.
There is also no language in our homeowners association that says you can request a variance.
From your homeowners?
Correct.
Okay, but you want ours first, okay.
Mr. Bostic,
Yes, ma'am.
does the HOA require you, if you do put in a new fence, that do they have like a design committee that they have to have?
Yes, they do. Our fence on the other side, the new fences that we put in, went through the design review committee, architectural committee.
Why did you choose not to have this particular fence go through it?
We replaced an existing fence. We didn't need any architectural review, and then we thought, well, let's put in the 2 foot higher to get some privacy. That's all it was. That was
Understand.
a problem area looking behind.
Hindsight, we know all about it.
2020.
So, exactly.
Yes.
You mentioned the concept of a trellis, and I know that staff had notated that, and I understand what you're saying. A trellis is not a blocking type fence.
Correct.
But rather something that some kind of plant could grow on and then fill that out, so then it would be blocking anything coming through. Have you considered, I noticed that you have some trellises on the fence itself, and there's I assume there's something growing on that.
Well, that's my second iteration of those plants. The way the wind comes down the funnel between the two homes, the first set, come winter, they froze, burned up, so I had to replant. The chances of them ever getting up to 8 feet are not very good.
Okay. Is there any other questions of the applicant?
Comment. It looks nice, and I appreciate the pictures from inside your home. It really helps to have that perspective on how it looks for you. I do want to uphold it's not this body's job to do it, but I want to respect your HOA's covenants or what they want to do. And so I'm hesitant to vote. I do not want to give weight to your argument when you go to them, but I'd just like to know what they think first about this. And I'm not sure how we resolve that, but that's where I'm struggling with.
But you're entitled to have us vote on it tonight if that's what you want to do.
You are, and I share Commissioner Hicks' sentiments in that because of the close proximity, you are not alone in this, but this body, we start talking about precedent. You set a precedent by a variance, and for us to stay consistent, that is our struggle. That's our challenge right now.
I understand.
And I would also echo, I completely understand your your application and the reasoning behind it. However, we are limited as to what we can do as a commission based on the ordinance, and we have to find certain requirements. Your lot is small, but I look at the neighborhood and there are several lots that are similar shapes. So my concern is that we're opening the door for an avalanche of applications from your neighborhood where this situation is occurring. And again, I think since that is a potential, I'd like to hear what your HOA thinks as far as, are they going to be okay with having several sections of 8-foot fence around their neighborhood?
Well, at the risk of embarrassing somebody, but our president of our homeowners association is here.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm not going to talk about that, but would you mind? I don't know if he's for this or against this, so
Well,
I
and
may
we
be putting
will-
him on the spot.
We will open it up in a moment for additional people to speak. Is there any other questions of this applicant?
Actually, just more of a question. Could we add a motion to possibly have the BZA's approval contingent upon the HOA's approval?
I don't see a reason why we could not. We could also have a motion to table this vote pending the HOA's decision.
But if the HOA refers back to the city again, to
Well-
the regulation, then he's just doing a circle again.
Well, I mean, that would be their decision.
Okay.
So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
At this time, is there anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of this variance? And I would ask, just for time's sake, if you could keep it brief as possible. Thank you very much.
Jennifer Bostic, 7262 Oakville Drive.
Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. Thank you. And a positive comment about this, and I understand what it sounds like we're going a little bit around in a circle, whether it's going to be HOA approved or whether you're going to approve it. And you use the word precedent. In our neighborhood, there is a precedent. It's not just our fence that's over 6 feet. There are some fences and some walls that have been approved. In fact, one 2 years ago by the Architectural Review Committee. And this wall is attached to a fence. So the effect is you've got about a 6-foot something and then about a 10-foot wall attached. So that got approved in our neighborhood.
By your HOA?
Architectural Review 2 years ago. So I don't. Yes, ma'am. So in that light, this is not a problem. Oh, pardon me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this variance? If you'll come forward, state your name and your address.
Yes, my name is Donald Fromm. I live at 7289 Oakville Drive, Germantown, and
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
yes, I do.
Thank you.
I am a member of the neighborhood. We do have an HOA. I happen to be president of the association starting roughly a month ago. The chairman of our architecture review committee is traveling out of the country, so he was not able to be here tonight. So I came to learn. I came to hear what Bob and Jennifer had to say. I wanted to hear how the board reacted to it. I agree wholeheartedly that this is somewhat precedent setting. To my knowledge, the board was not approached to approve a higher fence, and I understand you didn't think it was necessary to add it higher. We have requested that they bring it into code, and they chose to apply for a variance. Now, chicken, egg, I don't know. I came tonight to learn from both the Bostic's side and from your side. as far as which comes first, the chicken or the egg, my interpretation, and I'm not a lawyer, my interpretation is that they require permission from both. That should you grant a variance, that does not grant you a variance from the homeowners board. So they would have to apply again to us. I'm speaking in favor because I'm not opposed. I don't know which side I would take, but I did come to hear both views. It's been very helpful, and I have no idea what the Architecture Review Committee would decide.
Well,
what is the process, if you would, Mr. Fromm, if the Bostick's did bring this to the Architectural Review Committee, would that be a 30-day process, a 60-day, 90 days? Do you meet fairly often?
Our covenants, common deed, whatever we would call it, has a time frame in it, and I believe, and I know I'm testifying under oath, my recollection is it's something like 15 days.
I see.
Where an applicant deserves a response or their application is deemed to approve. That's from my memory, and I'm not sure that that's correct. You have an idea? Okay. But there is a time period specified in our covenants.
Do you believe that there would be a willingness because what I hear from the comments of the other commission members, and again, we won't know until there is a vote, it would be a decision to be made forthcoming from the HOA prior to our vote. We can certainly make something, I don't know if we want to, as you said, or as Mr. Brandock said, go ahead and vote conditionally. I'm not a fan of that, but would that be something that you think you could accomplish fairly quickly, or that committee could?
The committee, as I believe, is obligated to respond within a certain period of time.
I understand.
But before we respond, we have to have an application or a request. And to this date, there's been no request come forward on that section of the fence, to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Question of staff. When is the next Board of Zoning Appeals meeting?
The second Tuesday of December, I believe that would be the 12th.
Second Tuesday?
The filing deadline is, it would be challenging to get it in, just, the filing deadline is this Friday, and the issue is we have to notice in the paper, so we do need to know what's on the agenda approximately 3 weeks before that meeting to get it in the newspaper in time. So I don't know if they would have time to get that together before the design.
Well, and I appreciate that. The fence is already there, so it's not as if we're taking something down and putting it back up. So the sense of urgency, it is, I think, what we make of it.
sure, yeah, we wouldn't want to just draw this out, but in the meantime, your fence the fence would stay where it is pending decisions of the HOA and then ultimately the BZA if the HOA approves. So, and given, the holidays and everything, that we could, if it comes in January, then I'm assuming, I guess I'm speaking for the applicant, but since the fence is already up, there's nothing that is, that he is waiting on for us to give, we either approve or don't approve. So, anyway, as I mentioned earlier, I, as a commissioner, am hesitant to step into the shoes of your neighbors that are going to have to live with this situation and the potential that it creates. And it may be that potential is already there, and that's what the HOA decides. But I certainly, I would like to get that approval from the neighbors first before we then reviewed that, just as my personal thoughts. So, is there any other questions of this gentleman?
Can I ask one question of you?
Well, it depends.
Okay. Is it your sense that the Bostick's would require approval of both the neighborhood HOA and your board for the variance to stand? And I guess it wouldn't be a variance in the neighborhood, it would just be approval on our part.
Right, except, yes.
Is it your sense that the approval of both groups is what is involved in this being a permanent issue?
That is my understanding. Is they definitely do need a variance from us to have a fence higher than 6 feet, and then because of the neighborhood that it is in and the covenants of that came with the land, they would also need your association's approval.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Attorney Strain, is that also your recommendation?
But just to clarify, we don't enforce your covenants. You know, that would be your own attorney and your own recourse within your neighborhood.
Understand that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And I just want to say I appreciate you being here as a volunteer. We're all volunteers on the commission.
Just trying to learn.
I appreciate your desire to learn. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of the variance? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition of the variance?
While he's coming up here, just for clarification, if they got the homeowners association to say, we love it, that still doesn't mean when it comes back that it'll pass.
That is
And
correct.
we supersede by city ordinance what the homeowners association does.
Absolutely.
And I think that this is a situation can be remedied otherwise. So.
You're right, that neither group's decision is binding on the other. Your name and address, please.
I'm Richard Phillips. I live at 7284 Oakville Drive, Germantown.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So
I do indeed.
Thank you.
This is my second time living in close quarters with other homes. I lived in Riverdale Farms condominiums for 25 years before we built the house in the vineyards. So I'm familiar with close quarters and being good to your neighbors and that sort of stuff. In fact, when I served on the board over there, I served on the Architectural Review Committee, and that was, believe me, a constant headache. But when we decided to build in the vineyards, it was a open, beautiful, lovely community. It was probably 70% built by the time we built our place, and we really liked it. And we knew that, you know, the house next door was just a few feet away, and if there is ever anything over there that's offensive, we've got drapes and we've got window blinds and that kind of stuff. And I am concerned that a variance, even for this short piece, is going to open the door, and that eventually we could, and this is a little far-fetched, but it could be like a cavalry fort in the Old West before it's over. And I don't want to see that. I like our community the way it is, and just from the perspective of setting a precedent, I think it's a bad idea.
Thank you very much for coming. Is there any further comments among the commission? Yeah.
I'd just like to make one comment, and that is, even no matter what we vote tonight, like we have been discussing, we still have to, the homeowners will make that final decision. So
Sure.
if we were to vote yes, the homeowners still may vote no.
That is correct. That is correct.
That's it.
Is one option for does the applicant ask to table this, or how would that process go if to have it tabled? I don't know what the applicant wants to do, but I still would like to know what the homeowners association would decide on this before I make a decision.
Well, as a procedural matter, if we have a motion and we vote the motion down, then you have 6 months before you can reapply. Is that correct? If we, then we as a body, someone could make a motion that we Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna defer to council to clearly state this. So, Mr. Strain, if we as a body could move to table the discussion?
It would appear that some on the board are concerned that the application is incomplete or premature, such as many items that have come before the board where there was a need for a waiver by a utility, et cetera, to be done before the board could move forward. And in those circumstances, you've taken a considerable amount of testimony tonight. If the board feels that the matter is premature, you can always pass it until the next meeting. It's still under consideration for the receipt of further factual information. And if the board felt, as some have indicated, that it would be worthwhile to the board to have the opinion of the Architectural Review Committee for the Homeowners Association, then so be it.
So, and that would be accomplished by someone on the board making a motion that the matter be continued until the application is completed with some information regarding the Architectural Review Board's decision on this matter.
Alan, would the applicant not have to agree to that? They can ask for a hearing tonight.
If the applicant wants to, since there is an apparent, there may be premature in that all the information is not yet available to the board. The applicant could do that. The board, on its own motion, if you did not have a drawing of the building and some of the things we've seen tonight, you would not feel comfortable voting on it, and so would ask that that matter be passed until the application or needed information and the board's opinion was complete.
Okay. And knowing how on fence issues we typically vote, let's say the Homeowners Association Review Board or Architectural Review says, sure, this is great. It still doesn't meet Germantown's.
Absolutely. It is, their decision's not binding on us.
That's right. So, you know, they say we love it. We say it sets a precedent.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That is.
So, you know, we may be making him go back for nothing to the Architectural Review.
So would your recommendation be to go ahead and proceed with a vote this evening?
Because we supersede the Homeowners Association, there's no point in having him, you know, go back and ask their permission, whether they love it or not, either to bring his support, oh, the neighborhood loves it. It's still up to us. We supersede, so I think that he is entitled to a vote tonight.
Well, is there any other discussion among the commission?
If we were to
I think you've gone out.
I'm sorry. If we were to table this until the application was complete, do we put a time limit on that? I mean, does it have to be complete within 60 days, 30 days, 90 days? I mean, the fence is out of compliance right now.
Generally, matters are passed to the next meeting.
Okay.
And then if incomplete, passed again. Mr. Uhlhorn's comment, though, does bring to bear thought, because I don't know if it matters to the board.
That's right. You know,
the decision of, assume in the applicant's favor, the decision of the homeowners committee, the architectural review committee, is that they approve it. It's still, you still have to make a vote. So the best, in the applicant's favor, they approve it.
Well, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Strain. However, the comments that I've heard this evening are leaning more toward we absolutely are not going to set a precedent if we have not heard from an HOA, and they've not had an opportunity to have that be vetted through their process, their architectural design or architectural review committee. So I'll ask staff's recommendation. Would it be best to confer with the applicant for a moment to determine whether or not they would want us to proceed with a vote, which would mean, again, to state what we've already said, another 6 months that they would have to become compliant in between that time. So those are just my comments.
I have a question too for the board. As you noted in your staff report, the fence that they replaced, the main section of it was supposed to be 6 feet. There was a cap put on it, which brings it over what is technically allowed for the ordinance. So the question also is not just the section here, but is the board going to consider the extra 3-foot cap on the remaining section of the fence?
3 feet or 3 inches?
3 inches. I'm not twisted up by 3 inches. You could cure that with mulch.
We're problem solvers here.
I believe the applicant is indicating that he may have some additional things to add.
I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place here because our covenants say nothing about a variance. I can go to the Architectural Review Committee, they can look through all their records and say it has to be in compliance with the city of Germantown. It doesn't say variance anywhere. It doesn't say, can you apply for a taller fence? It doesn't say that. So they're telling me they can approve it just based on the bylaws. So where does that leave me?
Well, it sounds like they just are following in line with what the city's ordinances are.
Right, and the city's ordinance allow for variance.
They can't tell you to drive on the left-hand side of the road inside your subdivision if it's not within the city ordinances.
So it sounds like you're saying your neighborhood association doesn't have any reason to turn this down because there's no rules that say that you can't allow an 8-foot fence. Is that right?
No, it's the opposite. They don't
just
have
the
any
opposite.
reason
We
to
saying 6
approve it
feet.
because they have no logic for a variance
Well,
within.
It says they conform to the requirements contained in the fence ordinance. The fence ordinance contains a ability to approve a variance. So that would be my position if I was the HOA, is that we're
Okay.
following the ordinance. The ordinance allows for a variance to be
The
granted.
city of Germantown ordinance allows for variance.
Right,
Well, then
which
I
is
have
the-
some ground to stand on.
The ordinance, I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I think at this point, you'll have to come forward if you want to speak.
But let Mr. Bostic have his turn. Are you finished?
No,
with
that's
what
the
you were
only
saying?
point I wanted to make. I can tear it down tomorrow, but that's not what I want to do. I really don't want to look into my neighbor's living room anymore. And I'd like to have a solid remedy for this.
Well, I mean, there are landscaping remedies of various sorts that you could do. So my guess is you can get all the approvals you want from the HOA, but at the end of the day, I think that you won't get your variance from the city, from this board. If our history follows suit from what we've done in the past.
I understand.
All right.
Yes.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Just trying to move things along a little bit.
I simply have one point of clarification.
Mm-hmm.
I understood when I asked the question whether the Bostics needed approval from both HOA and your group for an 8-foot fence.
Yes, believe
If they have an approval from your group, the neighborhood can still say no to the 8-foot fence.
Yes.
So you need approval from both? Okay. I misunderstood then your response to Bob.
I was just stating that there is, in my opinion, which is not worth anything because I'm not, I'm just a volunteer, is that there is a way for your HOA to grant to approve that
We could approve He would still need approval then
yes.
from
And
your group.
Both entities are
Right, both
independent
both
and
need
not
it.
binding on each other.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, welcome. Okay, one more question.
And thank you, Mr. Alhorn, for the mulch tip. I mean, seriously.
You gotta define
2.5 inches,
where is the ground?
2.5 inches.
I'm not twisted up about that.
Share with Bob, my husband Bob, and me how to put the 8-foot lattice work screen. And describe how we would do that. Do you have pictures of how it's done? Who's done it?
What I would suggest, if that's an area that you want to explore before we vote on this, I would suggest that you withdraw this application, which would just shift it back 1 month, and then meet with staff and talk to them about the different options. Because, and I'm not meaning to defer your question, but it is more of an explanation than I really understand. There's something about lattice and being attached.
Certainly, Mr. Alhorn has agreed he would show us how to do it.
Look, believe me, it's not rocket science.
Thank you.
I would prefer, rather than a commission member, certainly y'all can discuss that afterwards.
I think we ought to vote on it and put it to bed, and then you can solve the problem.
Well, but if they wish to withdraw and work with staff, then they may not ever need our variance to begin with. Yes.
It's not staff's position to work with them about coming up how lattice work would work or not work. That's something that the applicant needs to figure out. And also, these options were mentioned at the time of the application. When the applicant came in, he requested a variance. I said, I understand your issue. You have the other options of putting up landscaping or lattice work, because I'm not always sure if the board will grant a variance, but you're more than welcome to bring it forward. So what exactly would you like us to work with on the applicant then?
I was, only because I know there's something about the lattice work being close to the fence but not attached.
That's not planning division. Planning division does not, that's not our purview. We don't work with that.
Okay.
So.
All right. I think at this point,
What do you want to do?
we need to have a motion, or unless the applicant wishes to withdraw, which I'm just stating what needs to happen. So I think we're at the point of this meeting that we need to have a motion. So.
I have a question. Are we to do this in 2 motions though? Because we said that we're voting on the 6-foot fence that has the 3-inch cap, and then also on the other fence that's 8 feet.
We can certainly do that if I get a motion broken up that way. So is there anyone that would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the variance to allow a 6-foot, 3-inch high fence within the required yard setback.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All right, please call the roll.
Ms. Sherman?
My thoughts are not together yet, because I keep, wait a minute, we're voting on the 6 foot.
This is the 6 foot with a 3 foot.
Okay.
This is 3 foot, or 3-inch cap.
I vote yes.
Mr. Yulhorn?
All right, does this include the 8-foot section?
No, this is
Oh,
simply
yeah,
the
that's
6
okay
foot with,
then.
this
Yeah, I'll
is simply the
vote for that.
cap.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Browndyke?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
No.
Chairman Sisson?
Yes. So that portion of the motion, or that motion passes. Now, do I have another motion regarding the 16-foot section of 8-foot 3-inch fence?
Move to approve. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's move on.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Browndyke?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
No.
Ms. Hicks?
No.
Mr. Yulhorn?
No.
Ms. Sherman?
No.
Chairman Sisson?
No. So that portion of the motion does not pass, and that concludes this matter. At this time, I Is there any old business to discuss among our commission? Regarding new business, I would just like to mention, in case we do not have a meeting in December, I want to recognize our commissioner, Pat Sherman, for all her many years of volunteering on this commission. This is it takes a lot of work and thought, and I appreciate all your service to the city, and you will be sorely missed on our commission. So.
And I don't think I can echo that with a.
All right. There being, oh, yes.
Before we adjourn, I do have two announcements. One, please call me as soon as possible to let me know if you would be available for the December meeting. Email me so that we can have a count early enough to make sure that we have a quorum for that meeting. And then second, if you have not turned in your community education hours, please do so. I have to have that information by the end of December, so the sooner you can get that to me, the better, to make sure that everyone has their hours. If you still need opportunities, please email me, and I will work with you to try to find some things for you to be able to do to address that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no more.
Do you know right offhand whether you have mine or not?
I have none of this.
Huh?
All right. There being no further business in front of our commission, it's now adjourned.